Welcome to the new Workology Go Podcast. In just under 5 minutes, we'll get you the HR and workplace news you need before you start your day 2 times a week. Get ready, get set, and go with the new Workology Go Podcast.
Here are today's HR and workplace news headlines from the Workology Go Podcast. I'm Jessica Miller-Merrill. This podcast is sponsored by HSA Bank.
Remote work is no longer a privilege. It's become the standard operating procedure for at least 50% of the U.S. population. In fact, I'm working from an insurance company office right now while my family is enjoying an afternoon at the beach in Texas. Much of my own team also works remote. We are living in a different virtual workplace than you and I first started in. Finding ways to engage and communicate with your team are always a challenge. In fact, loneliness is listed as the #1 issue for virtual workers, and I'm thinking about that for my own team. Aside from engaging your virtual workers, there are other concerns that might not be on your HR radar, including the topic of labor law posting requirements. Today's featured article on Workology Go comes from postertracker.com and is titled, "Remote Worker Jobs Are on the Rise and Have Special Labor Law Posting Requirements." I'll link to the article in the transcript of the Workology Go podcast. In the virtual workplace, how and should we share and communicate about employment laws? In the traditional workplace, it's easy. We place these things in the break rooms and in kitchen areas, except we don't have a virtual kitchen in the virtual workplace. My team works on the internet, and we have online communication platforms like Slack and Microsoft Teams to talk to one another. We talk to each other on Instant Messenger, over video conferencing, and via comments on Google Drive. How should we handle communicating labor law poster requirements to our virtual employees? Ashley Kaplan, Esquire. She's the senior employment law attorney with ComplyRight, the nation's leading provider of HR compliance solutions, including PosterGuard, weighs in.
Thank you, Jessica. As you've already mentioned, remote work is on the rise in nearly every U.S. industry. And when it comes to your remote workers and telecommuters, posting compliance presents a unique challenge. By law, employers must provide the mandatory labor law notices to all employees, and that includes your off-site workers, telecommuters, people who work in the field, and those who work from home. For years, the PosterGuard legal team has gotten questions from our customers saying they have employees who work from home and they wanted to know what they're supposed to do in terms of the posters. Should they be sending these employees full-size laminated posters? And we've all kind of laughed trying to imagine someone working from home putting up all these posters in their kitchen or on their bathroom walls. Obviously, that wouldn't work for everyone, especially since there are up to 21 required posters depending on your state, and that is not required. The federal government agencies have recently clarified that you don't have to provide the physical posters to these offsite employees. Instead, you can provide them electronically. And this is a narrow exception, by the way. Electronic posting otherwise is not a substitute for the full-size wall postings at your facilities. But for remote workers, and that includes anyone who reports to the office where the posters are displayed less frequently than 3 to 4 times a month, the government has recognized electronic delivery as a compliant way to meet your labor law posting obligations.
Virtual and remote workers are expected to increase in numbers, which is why finding a way to stay up to date on federal, local, and state compliance and law changes is essential, as well as establishing a communication process that works for you and your team. In addition to Workology, I also own a co-working space. It's a shared office space in Austin, Texas called Duo Works. Our location, which is 2 years old, is bursting at the seams. I see firsthand the growth in this virtual and remote workplace industry. In fact, I was just talking to a new office tenant about this very topic and the core office hours for his team who lives in Austin and the surrounding areas, but are commuting into the larger city. How you engage, communicate, and lead your remote workers is just as unique as your organization and teams.
With health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, health reimbursement arrangements, COBRA, and commuter benefits, HSA Bank is simplifying the health account experience for over 35,000 employers and 2.7 million members alike, inspiring everyone to own their health. Learn more at hsabank.com.
And that's it for this episode of the Workology Go podcast, sponsored by HSA Bank. I'd like to say a special thank you to Poster Guard Compliance Protection for their contributions and feature in this podcast. We're your go-to, Workology Go, we're your go-to for HR and workplace news. I'm Jessica Miller-Merrill. Thank you for listening.
To learn more about the Workology Go podcast, subscribe to us on Apple, Google, and Stitcher. Our podcast is also available on Alexa and Google Home. Learn more at workology.com/Go podcast and access this episode's resources, links, and reports for more information.